The year 2020 brought us a lot of new shows, some of which were good, some of which were phenomenal, and others which were just bad. One of these shows is Misfit of a Demon King Academy. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, it's probably one of the most controversial shows out there. Is it as bad as people say though? Let's analyze it today. Hey, what's up guys, this is Jordan here. So before starting this video, I would just like to say this is in the end a very subjective video and you may not be convinced by my arguments, and hey, in fact, if you aren't convinced by what I say, please let me know your counter arguments to my arguments in the comment section below. With that out of the way though, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like and subscribe as I try to put effort into the content I produce. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's begin. So Misfit of a Demon King Academy is, well, in my personal opinion, one of the most overlooked shows and actually the most misunderstood shows out there. So let's just tackle some of the arguments that people have against it. So first of all, to start off, the one common argument a lot of people have against the show is that they don't like Anos as a character. Now, here's the thing, in my personal opinion, the reason they say that is because he's an overpowered character. So here's the thing with the show, right? This isn't really the kind of show you're supposed to be watching like One Punch Man. You're supposed to be watching like One Punch Man and not really like Naruto or Dragon Ball. So yeah, that's something that should be said, as this is not really, it's actually quite obvious that Anos is actually always gonna win. That's just something that you need to keep in mind now, and that's just it. And even Anos' catchphrases, did you really think that you would beat me, insert something that he did. So yeah, that's something that needed to be said. And like One Punch Man, where Saitama just wins against literally everyone, Anos is that kind of character, and that needs to be kept in mind with him. And yeah, that's actually the part of it, as Anos is gonna win, but that's not the point of it. And the point is that it ends up being actually funny, and it's there for the comedic effect mainly. And also, let's move on to the next point, that another complaint that people have against the show is that its characters quote-unquote suck. Well, now do they? Is it really the characters that suck, or is that an effect induced by the show's bad reputation? Well, I think it's probably the latter. And here's the thing, right? A long time ago, back in 2019, when Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen were new series, they were also really rated low on my anime list, and their arguments against them were the same, that their characters really suck. But nowadays, no one is gonna say that, and it's mainly just because people don't want to like the show that they make an excuse to hate on the characters, where characters may not necessarily suck. And in the case of Misfit of a Demon King Academy, its characters really do not suck, and they get fleshed out later on in the series, and they do get fleshed out really well as well, especially Sasha and Misha, who are superficially at the start of the show really poor characters, but that's not how they remain throughout the show. So yeah, that's one thing. And also, let's say if the characters weren't fleshed out, right? But I personally don't think they aren't fleshed out, but let's suppose they weren't. The point where the show really shines out is its world building, not really the characters in the first place, since the world building in this show is really the magnum opus of it, and it's actually pretty great. If you actually spend time to read the wikia of this anime, it's actually pretty darn nice, and the world in this show is pretty interconnected, since we have Anos' palace, which is literally connected to an island, which is connected to his sword, and then that is also connected to Sasha and Misha, and there's literally a lot of interconnectivity in the show, and a lot of holism that gets overlooked in my personal opinion. And yeah, that's something that needed to be said. So yeah, the role building in the show is really great. Now, it's obviously not on the same level as, let's say, One Piece, but regardless though, it's pretty great and should not be overlooked by it. It's a pretty decent show with pretty decent world building. Next of all, let's move on to the next point, that this is quote-unquote an harem anime. Well, I personally think that yes, there are harem anime elements in it, but when it comes to harems, it really depends on how a harem is done, since a lot of shows that have harems don't necessarily get hate. Let's look at Classroom of the Elite. So here's the thing, right? The harem mainly ends up working when the harem is not really the main focus of the show. So that's really the case with Classroom of the Elite, and its harem ends up working because it's not really the main focus of the show. And I think that the same effect really applies to Misfit for Demon King Academy as well, since the main show does revolve around Anos and his quest to really relocate the lost pieces of his castle. And yeah, that's something that should be kept in mind. And also that another problem is that a lot of people point out is that Anos gets all the girls easily, which in my personal opinion is something that I slightly agree with, since well, when he actually attracts these females, he pretty much does it effortlessly. But later on, though, the romantic arcs between him and the characters are actually later on embellished and fleshed out later on in the series, and that really gets overlooked. Again, that's the sad part of it. So yeah, that's something in my personal opinion that while I will agree that the romantic elements in the show aren't really the best, they are actually fairly decent. And actually in the second season that it actually gets even better, and since Anos is not the main character who the romantic story revolves around. So yeah, next of all, let's move on to another point that a lot of people hate on this show for, and that of course is the fact that, well, here's the thing, right? The voice actor for Anos changes in the second season, and in the voice actor for Anos in the first season was actually involved in a cheating scandal with none other than Lisa herself. So that's something sad. I don't think that just because of one bad voice actor, a lot of the other staff should suffer, as they also put a lot of effort into the show. But yeah, that's something. So I personally think though that the voice change isn't really necessarily bad and does not take the enjoyment value out of the show, as the new voice actor for Anos isn't really bad and he actually fits his character as well. So that's something that need to be kept in mind, and that this really is the sole reason why the second season is rated lower than the first one, as they changed the voice actor and a lot of people are pissed about that. I don't think this is a really bad change though, and what people are overlooking instead is the story arc in the second season. That's really where the show is shining right now, and if you actually take the time to look at it, that's where the world building is building up, and we have a lot of new characters, really great characters such as Shinrigeli and Goddess Reno. So yeah, that's something that I also need to get out of the way, as a lot of people really just hate on it because of the change of the voice actor, and I don't think that's really fair. So yeah, these are my first main 4 points about this and why I disagree with these points, and my counter arguments for them, those being respectively that first of all, the voice actor change, and I don't think that's a really big deal. Second of all, that the characters are trashed upon, and I don't think they necessarily suck, and even if they did, the show really shines out in its world building. And third of all, that Anos being a main character is just sort of the point of the show, and he's not really a zero to hero main character like Goku or Naruto, and he's more like Saitama than anyone else. So yeah, and also worth mentioning that this anime is also really, well, the harem is not the main focus of the show. Yeah, that needs to be pointed out. So yeah, another thing that I should point out is that a lot of people tend to assume that this is really an isekai anime, and in my personal opinion it's not really isekai, since, well, Anos is still in his own world, he's just waking up into the future, and it's not really like he's traveling into the new world without any knowledge whatsoever, and Anos is actually still familiar with the mechanism in this world, and he's not totally alien to what's going on around him, although he still needs to learn some of the changes that happened over the time, but he's still familiar with the mechanisms and surroundings of the area and where something is located, etc, etc. Now, this is an interesting juxtaposition because this show really similar, well, in this regard anyways, named Inuyasha exists, and that does count as an isekai, but the fact on the matter is that Kagome is going to the past where she is actually discovering a new world, and in the case of Anos, that's not really the case, as he is still familiar with this world. He just needs to put together some new pieces to see what happened in his absence, and a lot of the world hasn't really changed as much, in my personal opinion. So yeah, and also worth pointing out that if you actually look at my anime list rating of the show and, well, the listings of it, you will see that the show is not really listed as an isekai. And yeah, because it's not really an isekai, it's pretty different from actual isekais, like that time I got reincarnated as a slime, or Mushoku Tensei, or well, literally any other isekai that may or may not exist out there. So yeah, that's something to be kept in mind. It's not really an isekai, and yeah, it's more so of a light novel anime, and light novel animes tend to have this structure to them, while a lot of light novel anime are indeed isekais, so they don't necessarily have to be. Well, anyways, though, this has been Doran, guys, and this is my opinion on Misfit of Demon King Academy and why it does not suck as much as people like to say it does. And thank you all for watching this far, and I hope you enjoyed, and make sure to like and subscribe if you did. With that out of the way, I'll be signing out now. Peace, gamers. Take care.